Drug companies get a bad press. To their critics, they're only interested in one thing: profit.
Imagine for a moment popping a pill before bed that costs about $13.50. Now imagine waking up the next morning to find that the price of the exact same pill jumped to $750 overnight. That is just what happened to one drug.
The company appears to have been caught in an attempt to artificially inflate the price of life-saving cancer medicines in Europe. And according to leaked documents, employees plotted to stop supplying drugs and at one point threatened to destroy drug stocks unless health authorities agreed to price hikes.
Tonight, the head of a drug company who's accused of gouging patients says he should be thanked.
Drug research, though, is a risky business. Just ask AstraZeneca. The Anglo-Swedish firm's share market value has fallen sharply over the past few hours after it revealed that trials of a treatment for lung cancer had failed to live up to expectations. AstraZeneca shares are currently down 16% in London. Yesterday, rival GlaxoSmithKline revealed that it will sell off 130 brands and abandon more than 30 research projects to focus on drugs that generate the highest returns. AstraZeneca has also been pulling out of what it believes to be less important research. The Access to Medicines Foundation in Amsterdam campaigns to make medicines and vaccines more accessible in low and middle income countries. Executive Director Iyer has been telling me more about the financial pressures on big pharma.
Many of the large multinational companies are under pressures of cuts in their budget, appearing in front of the yearly markets, the share prices, and international pressures where there are larger priorities, greater global health challenges in place. So I think to be a pharmaceutical company today, there are quite a lot of various different types of financial, social, public health pressures all around them.
And are you worried what all of this might mean for patients? When you have, for example, a company like GlaxoSmithKline saying it's dumping 30 drug projects, it's also divesting around 130 older drugs, which it says have limited sales. Do you fear what that might mean for patients?
Yeah, there's definitely a fear of what this could mean for patients, which is why we do the work that we do in the Access to Medicine Foundation in terms of monitoring the progress and trying to encourage the pharmaceutical industry to stay on top of the needs that are there in low-middle-income countries, or globally anyway. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize that companies that have consistently over the many years shown evidence of their commitment and stayed on top of the game despite the pressures that have been there, that gives you some level of confidence that these companies will actually still think of the social responsibility that they hold. And GlaxoSmithKline is one such example. They have been topping the Access to Medicine Index for the last 10 years, the last 5 editions of the biennial Access to Medicine Index. And by that, I mean they have committed to affordable pricing strategies, extensive research and development projects that look at diseases which have very low commercial potential, like the neglected tropical diseases, malaria. And, GlaxoSmithKline has always, in the last few years, talked about their drive towards more of a low-margin, high-volume business model, which is relatively reasonable and reduces the reliance on the blockbuster therapies coming onto market.
But of course, if budgets are under pressure in the way that you say they are, and this is across the board, companies are going to be looking at projects in developing countries, which by definition they get less money from. They're bound to be putting them under review, aren't they?
Correct. Which is why I think it's important for a company to think of what they're getting involved in when they're partnering on projects that are risky. And for that, there are mechanisms like product development partnerships, public-private partnerships, public-funded partnerships that help to de-risk some of the interventions that are in place. And when they are forced to make choices, and if and when that happens, I think it's important to remain involved in key projects. And this is particularly important for a company like GlaxoSmithKline because one of the main reasons that they've topped the index is they've got one of the largest portfolios of relevant products for emerging markets and developing countries. Products such as pediatric respiratory syncytial virus and malaria and several diarrheal diseases in their vaccine business. And it will be more than a shame if some of these projects were to get cut. And I'm reasonably confident that they will think hard about what is being reduced as they're forced to make commitments and cuts. At the same time, I think the public sector needs to be aware of the fact that as a public sector, we need to recognize that companies need to make choices and recognize and encourage risk-taking by companies, because without the innovators, we don't have drugs on the market. We don't have new effective treatments on the market. So I think it's important that the public sector and the private sector work together to figure out how to solve this broken innovation model we have.
That was Iyer at the Access to Medicines Foundation in the Netherlands.